Hello adventurers, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are at Petit Jean State Park here in Arkansas, and we're going to start our day off at the Mather Lodge. Now here you can get the best service in the entirety of the park, but there's some other things that they can help you with here, including some coffee. So I think that's where we're going to start off our day, and then I'll kind of just show you around the park as we move around. Now here in the lodge they have some really interesting things, including some CCC artists, and you can see here these beautiful pieces that flank the main entry. Now here we learn a little bit more about the Arkansas park system, and I think this is a fascinating place to start your journey, just because you get the history of not only this park but all the parks. And it was actually something that was the labor of love for one individual man. Here you find Dr. T.W. Hardison, the founder of the Arkansas State Park system. He came to the mountain in 1906, and he was a contract physician for a lumber company, and he discovered the wonders of the mountain and began to pursue its preservation. Now originally they really wanted this to be a national park because of its gorgeous views, its amazing history, and also the value that it brings to not only Arkansas but all of us. But the national park system wasn't ready to accept it, so he wanted to preserve this in a way he could, and so he started to look into different endeavors that he could do so, and that is what inspired the Arkansas State Park system. Now by 1927 it was in full effect, and they finally were able to establish the park system through a very interesting little piece of legislation, Act 172, and that is what created all of the natural state's beautiful, wonderful spaces that we can explore. Now over time, since 1927, other parks have been added, and now there are overall, I think, 52 that you can explore here in the natural state. Not only that, but Arkansas has a special tiny percent tax that is collected from just basic tourism and also from people who live here that goes back into the communities and back into the park systems to make these spaces special for us all. And I think that that's pretty amazing. Now the lodge that we are standing in is the Mather Lodge, and you can see that this was originally established in 1935. Many of the structures we see here in the park were actually developed by the CCC, and they are astounding, beautiful structures made of stone and masonry, and they provided skills for people coming into the area so that they could learn a little bit more about different things, but also provided jobs during the Great Depression. And so that's why I really enjoy coming to places like this, because we can see the beauty and wonder that surrounds us. Now inside Mather there is a store that you can purchase all sorts of cool things. Today I'm going to get a patch, but they do have things for the kiddos, they have souvenirs, they have clothing items, and they also have a few basic supplies. So here at the lodge they also have Wi-Fi that you can use, and that's super helpful because both Dee and Riley have struggled with service in the park. I with AT&T have had some, however. It's not always like that. Sometimes Riley has better service, sometimes Dee does, but in this particular park AT&T had one bar, and it was enough to be able to connect and do the things that we needed to do to research a little bit today. However, you know, they do have those points so that you can connect no matter where you are. So just come to Mather if you need a little bit of internet. So while we're here, we decided to eat at the Mather Lodge restaurant for lunch, and they also have dinner, and they have an extensive menu here, and sometimes they do a buffet as well. Okay guys, we just finished up at Mather, and we found that there are a couple of interesting options departing from the Mather Lodge. You can go on a couple of hikes from here, one of which is a falls trail. This one is a little bit harder, so today we've decided that instead of doing the strenuous trail, we're going to take the other trail that also departs out of the same trailhead. Now this one is one that you can either drive to and take a quarter-mile loop, or you can walk to and do about a 3/4 mile kind of easy walk to start off, and then it splits off toward the Bear Cave. Now the Bear Cave is one that was highly suggested by the people here at the park, and they said that it has a really awesome viewpoint and it's just a little bit different, so that's the one we're going to be taking on today. Okay, we have now made it to the Bear Cave Trail, and this one is going to be a pretty easy hike. It's just a 1/4 mile. It's supposed to be a way for us to kind of explore through some of the interesting crags and rocks, and let's go. So we made it to one of the caves. This thing is interesting, to say the least. It goes kind of in here. It could be a good shelter, I guess. Looking out, it's amazing. And this part of the park looks very different than the part that we even camped on. I can see the lodge from across the way. That's also pretty neat. So very, very cool. Wow, inside the rocks are cut and they're shaped weird. And you can see all the different texture. This is amazing. And it's not super deep in here, but it is a little bit moist. But this is what it looks like on the inside. It's just barely taller than me. Just barely. This is awesome. This is very different than the caves I've explored before. But now there's some other things to go explore, so let's get out of here. So it appears the more that you explore, the more you find caves. And this whole entire stone side is filled with them. Riley just went into one that Dee had gone into, but then Dee alerted us to a huge cave ahead. So let's go check it out. Wow. This is so cool. Dee is our line leader. Okay, we went to the bear caves and that was awesome. It was beautiful to be able to go in each one of those crevices and then just kind of explore a little bit. The moss was lining the rocks. There were little lichen everywhere. And we even saw some climbers. Now I didn't film them because, you know, we don't know them and we don't want to invade their privacy, but it was overall pretty neat. Now, one thing I did notice though, whenever we were doing that, was there was another place that we could come that is just a very short walk, and that is the Cedar Falls overlook. Now, whenever we went initially to the Mather Lodge, they had the Cedar Falls trail, which takes you down a 2-mile strenuous trail to this waterfall. But you can still see the falls even if you can't do the strenuous trail by coming to the overlook, and you can see it from above. So that's what we're about to do. Before we go down that trail, however, we can see here the little marker. It says that it is 0.25 miles. It is easy and it's on a boardwalk. So as we're going around, this will be all even and ADA friendly. Now, what we can expect to find on this trail is a 95-foot plunge of a waterfall. This is going to be so neat. As you travel along the boardwalks, you'll find a variety of different signs explaining the area that we're in a bit more. For example, Petit Jean State Park's landscape, flora, and fauna provide you with outdoor recreation opportunities because they are protected forever. This is a mixed pine hardwood forest, and it grows over time in response to varied environmental factors. You can find hickory, white oak, red oak, pine, sycamore, and dogwood. We also learn more about the bands that we're seeing in the rocks around us. Sandstone contains iron minerals such as hematite. The sandstone also contains water that is held between grains of sand and is present as the sediment turns into rock. And this water is saturated with iron minerals because they exist within the rock already. Once the rock is exposed to weathering and rainfall on the outcroppings, fresh groundwater filters through the rock and is absorbed into the water table. It creates iron-rich bands or striations throughout the rocks that continue to oxidize. Now the neat thing about coming out to trails like these that are a little bit shorter is you get beautiful viewpoints, and at the same time you can come out here no matter what your accessibility is, and I really enjoy that. And I think that that's what makes state parks like this one here in Arkansas, the first state park in Arkansas, pretty unique and special. And it lets us all recreate in the outdoors no matter what our abilities are, and that makes nature even better. Riley is going to lead us on a mission because we have lost Dee, and we're going to go see if she went down to the viewpoint on the bottom down here along the rim. Apparently there's another trail down here. I don't know where she went though. There. Did we find her? We found her. Just a short distance up the way, you can stop at another point, and this is a historic cabin. And this is pretty neat. It isn't open or anything. You could come up and see it, but it does attach to a couple other trails. So we're going to go and look as much as we possibly can at this. There was a sign mentioning the graffiti, and I can see why, because as you're looking at the beams here, there are so many people who have taken the time to etch their names into it, and it is actually a crime to do this. So please don't be part of the problem. Instead, come out here and just enjoy these spaces and don't be like these people. But as we get to check out the cabin, this front door does open, but there's a metal portion here, and you can kind of peek in and see what this looks like. This cabin, believe it or not, would have been the home of not just maybe one person, but several potentially. And it had a small fireplace, which would have been the heat source. And then you'll notice that the logs were put together with a material between them, and that would have been like their modern insulation at the time. They would have had doors that were just made of wood, and this one probably didn't have any kind of windows in it either, other than maybe this little piece right here, which may or may not have actually been a window. This could have just been an area which was a pass-through or flume. Apparently Dee and Riley have found some kind of little lizard thing over here too, so you never know what you might find out here. Did you know that Petit Jean actually has a pretty interesting legend? There was a woman who was engaged to be married to a man who was sailing across to the United States, and she wanted desperately to be able to come with him. However, at the time, it wasn't acceptable for a woman to come and do work like her fiance was soon to be doing. So she disguised herself as a younger male, and she ended up coming across and working super hard, only to later perish here at Petit Jean. And in doing so, right on her deathbed, she announced to her fiancé what she had done, and he was able to see that her love had brought her here under disguise without him knowing. And he was very sad, and he mourned, and they buried her right here just about 4 miles outside of the park. And that is for which the name Petit Jean came from, which meant little boy, little man. So it's kind of interesting. But right over here, just a short distance away from where I'm standing, is that actual site. And this is pretty fascinating because it's on an overlook overlooking the beauty of the mountains here in Arkansas. But as we make our way to that pivotal point where we can find the grave of Petit Jean, we first see a sign about Stouts Point. Stouts Point is a rugged peak on the easternmost tip of Petit Jean Mountain, and it has withstood the ages and seen characters of Arkansas's history past and remains one of the most picturesque features of the park itself. Known since the 1850s as Stouts Point, this area was once called Nelson's Point, after Daniel Nelson, a hawkstone plantation foreman and apple orchard farmer who built a large home here in the 1890s. He received a homestead patent for this land in 1897. By 1920, the point was acquired by the Young Men's Christian Association, the YMCA, and it was turned into a camp. Today, the name Stouts Point is most often used. This area is managed by the Arkansas State Parks and has a long-term agreement with the Diocese of Arkansas. As we come to the end of the boardwalk, we find the actual gravesite of Petit Jean. And it says that on here that this is meant for a paying reverence to this particular woman who came here, of course, seeking out to be closer to her fiancé and then fell ill. However, it is said that now her spirit hovers over the mountain and creates an air of enchantment. And what a beautiful place to do so. This is an amazing stop. We are also going into, on the same property as the Stouts Point with the boardwalks, there is also an old YMCA camp building that still remains. It's a stone structure. Now, the ceiling is gone, but it still has some cool stuff, including these rocks, which almost have like a wood grain pattern. I don't know if this is natural or if this was something that they did, but it's very fascinating. So 1, 2, 3, pose. One, two, three, pose.
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, pose. I hope you can see now why this is a wonderful state park to visit. We've gone all around the park, we've explored, we've checked out the water, some of the hiking, and some of the little brain wrinkles you can find along the way. And I can definitely see why this is one of the most recommended parks that I have been told about here in Arkansas. I hope you guys will check this out, and remember guys, we're not here for a long time, but we are here for a good time. State parks like this make it oh so much fun. Till next time, bye!